For decades, we've searched the stars not only for planets but also for signals, for anomalies, those rare moments when something in the cosmos refuses to obey the rules. And now, the James Webb Space Telescope may have found precisely that. What began as a routine observation of the third interstellar object in the history of our solar system, 3 Atlas, has turned into something far stranger, far darker, and infinitely more important. Because deep in the vast, cold void beyond Mars, the Webb detected something it shouldn't have: artificial light, not just natural light. A glow that behaves like no comet or asteroid. A signature that follows no known physics of reflection or refraction. And now, astronomers and astrophysicists are left with one question that chills them to the core: what is 3 Atlas really? Stay with us as we dive deep into the data that has just reignited the oldest and most terrifying question of all time: are we alone? 3 Atlas was initially discovered as a faint speck on the edge of the solar system, moving with a trajectory no local object could follow. It was clearly interstellar, born beyond the sun's gravitational embrace, thrown across the galaxy by some unknown force, now silently moving through our neighborhood. At first, it was treated as a cosmic curiosity, like its predecessors, Oumuamua and Borisov. But even in its earliest images, something felt off. Unlike most interstellar objects, 3 Atlas was unusually bright, and not in a way that made sense. Its magnitude didn't correspond to its estimated size or makeup. It shimmered with an unnatural consistency, its brightness neither fading as expected nor flaring with any sign of outgassing or dust release. Traditional comets tend to brighten in bursts as ice sublimates, but this one remained steady, as if it were powered from within. Telescopes across the globe turned to observe it, and the Webb, with its unparalleled ability to peer into the infrared spectrum, was brought in to decode the mystery. What it saw changed everything. Perched a million miles from Earth at the Lagrange point, the James Webb Space Telescope was designed to see beyond the glare of stars and reveal what's hidden in the shadows. Its gaze upon 3 Atlas was expected to clarify the confusion. Instead, it amplified it. The telescope's instruments detected a centralized thermal emission that didn't correlate with any natural reflection of sunlight. Typically, a comet shines due to the sun's rays bouncing off dust and ice. But 3 Atlas showed an internal heat signature, something that radiated from the core outward. This wasn't dispersed light, it was emitted light. The thermal mapping revealed a pattern that followed no known distribution of natural objects' curves. It pulsed faintly, irregularly, and, most disturbingly, it seemed to cycle at intervals. That rhythm, repeating ever so subtly, suggested not randomness but design. Some scientists at NASA and the European Space Agency proposed exotic explanations: radioactive decay, alien isotopes, or friction in the subsurface. But as more data came in, those theories collapsed. The only consistent remaining explanation was the one no one wanted to write down: this object might be powered. As data from Hubble, the Webb, and terrestrial observatories piled up, a profile of 3 Atlas began to emerge, and it looked nothing like any known celestial body. Its trajectory was too precise to be chaotic, as if it was choosing its path, subtly adjusting course through gravity wells. Its rotation was unnaturally stable, with a tumbling motion that defied standard inertial drift. And its lack of a cometary tail, even when passing by solar radiation, suggested a shell or casing, perhaps something protecting it from the heat. Then came the most controversial finding: the albedo, or reflectivity, of its surface was measured to be nearly perfect in parts, approaching that of polished metal, not rock, not ice, not dust, but metal. The implications hit like a shockwave across the entire community of astronomers. If it was metallic, structured, and emitting energy, then we were no longer observing a natural thing. We were watching technology. The term probe was suddenly whispered in the corridor's beacon, craft, even an object. The notion that this could be an alien spacecraft was no longer confined to conspiracy discussion forums. It was now quietly circulating in institutional emails behind encrypted firewalls. Possibly the most damning piece of evidence wasn't the thermal emissions, the trajectory, or the strange metallic signature. It was the light. Photometric analysis revealed something startling. The light coming from 3 Atlas was confined to a small spectrum band. In other words, it wasn't a broad, natural reflection of sunlight, but a controlled emission of specific wavelengths. This is precisely what we do with lead arrays, systems for laser communication, and spacecraft signal beacons. Furthermore, the frequencies in this band were frequently used in communication and guidance systems on Earth. Not only that, but the light's intensity appeared to respond, ever so slightly, to solar radiation, as though some onboard system was adjusting it in real time. It flickered, not at random, but with a strange, intermittent pulse. Astronomers processed the data in known models of signals. What they got was inconclusive, but not meaningless. Some claimed that the pulses looked like binary sequences. Others said it might be a rotating power source. But the conclusion was undisputed. This was not a passive object. It was doing something deliberate, and we were watching it live. As the data poured in, a team of astrophysicists from MIT and Harvard ran a deep signal analysis over the electromagnetic emissions coming from 3 Atlas. At first glance, the frequencies seemed random, just noise dispersed throughout the spectrum. Yet, when they applied Fourier transforms to identify cyclical patterns, something emerged. Within the static, buried like a whisper beneath the chaos, was a structured, repeating pulse, too precise to be natural. It wasn't a typical modulation used in human binary technology, but it bore the unmistakable fingerprint of intentional encoding. Some speculated it could be a beacon, a repeating broadcast intended for receivers not of earthly origin. Others speculated that it might be telemetry, a constant data stream sent back to wherever this object came from. The unsettling part was this: no matter what the message was, it hadn't changed since the Webb first detected it. It appeared as though 3 Atlas wasn't trying to talk to us, but to someone else, and maybe that someone had already heard it. News of the discovery spread quickly through the highest levels of scientific institutions and defense agencies. A confidential report circulated internally within NASA and then leaked to an unnamed journalist revealed that top officials were already coordinating with global space agencies to determine whether 3 Atlas posed a threat. Some scientists argued it was benign and ancient probe, perhaps centuries old, on a pre-programmed route by way of the stars. Others weren't so optimistic. They raised questions no one could answer. If it is transmitting, who is receiving? If it has light emissions, does it also have propulsion? If it's here by design, then why now? The report mentioned the possibility, however remote, that 3 Atlas was not just passing through, but observing, tracking planetary alignments, electromagnetic fields, or even advanced civilizations. The possibility ignited panic behind the scenes because, if this object wasn't alone, then something else might be on the way, something that sent it. Further investigation into the luminosity of 3 Atlas led to a revolutionary hypothesis: the object wasn't just emitting energy, it was harvesting it. How the object's light output varied with proximity to the Sun, combined with its apparent lack of chemical reactions, supported the idea that it might be using a solar collection array or photonic absorption system embedded beneath its surface. Lowe and a group of scientists theorized that the dust cloud surrounding the object could serve a dual function, both as camouflage to mask its artificial structure and as a medium for capturing solar energy radiation. Taught in Hollywood, there was neither a landing nor an abrupt appearance in the sky, no immediate answers, only data, only light, only silence. The Webb continues to observe the object every day. Yet, each and every response it provides appears to raise two additional concerns. If this is contact, then it's contact on their terms, not ours, quiet, distant, unsettling. That may be the most terrifying thing of all, because what we're witnessing may not be an invitation. It may be surveillance, and we may have already been seen. Just when astronomers thought 3 Atlas had settled into a predictable trajectory, something unexpected happened. Its luminosity spiked dramatically. This wasn't a gradual increase caused by its proximity to the Sun. It was a sudden flare, captured in real time by the James Webb telescope and confirmed by several ground-based observatories. The object's brightness increased by nearly 40% in under 2 minutes, then stabilized at a new elevated level. No obvious explanation fit the data. There was no evidence of solar wind interaction, no impact event, no fragmentary disintegration. It was as if something or someone had turned a switch. The flare wasn't just visible, it carried with it a change in the object's thermal signature, almost as if systems had powered on. Theorists proposed a chilling possibility. This object had entered an awakened phase, either triggered by its proximity to our star or by our own observations. If this flare was a deliberate act, then it was meant to be seen. Shortly after the anomalous brightening, orbital calculations by a variety of agencies detected something else. 3 Atlas was no longer precisely following its anticipated course. It had shifted slightly, subtly, but measurably, an alteration that cannot be explained by gravity alone. Even solar radiation pressure, often invoked as a scapegoat for small course changes in lightweight objects, did not add up. This shift was deliberate and, more unsettling, was deeper where the new trajectory led into the solar system, using a modified inclination that brought it closer to the orbital plane of Earth. The object was no longer just passing through. It had, in effect, changed lanes. Some scientists called for restraint and cautioned it was a gravitational anomaly, but others perceived the shift as a tactic, a subtle course correction that no comet or rock had ever made. If 3 Atlas was capable of even limited propulsion or navigation, it meant we were no longer observing a relic. We were watching a vessel in motion, a vessel with intent. As the object passed within range of Webb-based spectroscopic instruments and Hubble telescopes, scientists began to detect elements and compounds that raised more red flags. Traces of highly reflective alloys, rare earth elements, and, most shockingly, spectral absorption lines resembling compounds never before cataloged in our periodic table were detected. These were not the kinds of materials one would find in a frozen chunk of rock from across the stars. They were engineered or, at the very least, synthesized under conditions not known to exist naturally. One spectral profile matched no known chemical process but closely resembled theoretical compounds proposed in quantum material labs, substances thought to exist only under the influence of intense magnetic fields or quantum confinement. This discovery implied either unfathomable age, suggesting the object predates human civilization by millennia, or highly advanced recent manufacture by a civilization far beyond our own. The material's nature spoke louder than any signal, since, even if we couldn't decode the message, the evidence was clear. The messenger itself was unnatural. With mounting evidence pointing to an unnatural origin, governments and their agencies began to respond not publicly, but with unmistakable urgency. Encryption levels rose. Observatory networks and research teams were quietly reassigned. A sudden, unforeseen rise in satellite traffic recalibrations was noted across multiple continents. Spacefaring nations initiated discrete contingency discussions conducted behind closed doors. One leaked document from an international defense consortium suggested that 3 Atlas might not be a lone visitor but a scout. The peculiar structure of the object, its apparent stable rotation, and capability to remain operational across interstellar distances indicated a design consistent with observation over time probes. But if it was scouting, what was it looking for? And, more disturbingly, what might come next? Across universities, observatories, and military command centers, one terrifying consensus was forming: we were no longer alone in the universe, and the first contact might not be a conversation but an evaluation. As the speculation reached a boiling point, a bold team at the SETI Institute decided to take the risk no one else would. They transmitted a focused radio pulse directly toward the projected location of 3 Atlas. The message contained universal mathematical constants, the periodic table, and basic visual representations of humanity. It was meant to be a cosmic handshake, a cautious hello. Days passed, then a week without an answer. But just when the experiment was about to be archived as another unanswered call into the dark, one of the monitoring stations in Chile registered something strange. A narrowband return pulse, off frequency, distorted, but with timing clear enough to reflect the initial message. It wasn't a reply in language. It wasn't an echo. It was a ping, a signal of return with just enough variation to suggest it wasn't a passive reflection.